Hello everybody. I've updated the format of these videos from the last one. If you haven't seen the last one, this is version 2 of this deck. I've made some big changes to make the win condition more efficient. I took out some bad cards that I didn't realize that I didn't actually need to win the game. So it's more streamlined, it's more efficient, and it works pretty consistently every time. Let's go through the list real quick. Obviously, we've still got Breya as our commander. She costs a white, a blue, a black, and a red for a legendary artifact creature human. When she enters, she creates 2 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying, and for 2 mana, you can sacrifice 2 artifacts to choose one of the following abilities. She can do 3 damage to target player, she can neg 4/4 a creature, or she can give you 5 life. I never realized how important that 5 life would end up being until recently, and I'll show you why that's actually so good. Then we've got Tezzeret, mostly because he can untap artifacts and search for artifacts. We like artifacts. This is an artifacty deck. Then we have some good stuff, including Esper Sentinel, who conveniently artifact creature, very good. We've got Grand Abolisher and Voice of Victory for protection. We've got Orcish Bowmasters. We've got Mockingbird. We got Magda. We got Lotho. We got Ranger Captain. We got Simian Spirit Guide. And a new addition, we got Valley Floodcaller. And I'll explain why as well in a moment. We've also got some 0-cost artifact creatures like Ornithopter and Memnite, as well as some cheap changelings that are also artifact creatures, but are also dwarves for Magda. Then we've got tutors, Demonic Tutor, Diabolic Intent, Fabricate, Imperial Seal at sorcery speed. Then we've got Jessica's Wheel, Ride of Flames, Sabine's Reclamation, Wheel of Fortune, and Windfall, all very good. We've got, as far as tutors go, Enlightened Tutor, Gifts Ungiven, Intuition, and Vampiric Tutor. And then also, we've got Tribute Mage and Magda, count as tutors as well. Oh, and Goblin Engineer, which I always forget. He lets you go fetch an artifact too, which is super cool. Puts it in the graveyard, but, still counts. And then we've got Counter Magic, an offer you can't refuse, Flusterstorm, which is new, Force of Negation, Force of Will, Into the Floodmaw is good interaction, Mindbreak Trap is new, and Swan Song and Red Elemental Blast, as well as Swords to Plowshares for interaction and Dispatch for interaction. We're going to be playing a lot of artifacts, so Dispatch, I think, is better than Swords to Plowshares in this deck. Then we got a bunch of artifacts. Some of them are just 0 drops, and some of them are good stuff, but most of them are mana. Arcane Signet, Chrome Mox, Felwar Stone, Lion's Eye Diamond, not that that's primarily used for mana, but we'll get to that. Lotus Petal, Mana Vault, Mox Amber, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal, Soul Ring, Talisman of Creativity, Dominance, Indulgence, Progress. Those are the mana that we care about a lot. And then good stuff, Defense Grid, helps protect for the win. Imposter Mech is a new addition, I'll go over that as well. Mishra's Bauble, 0-cost artifact. Worst case scenario, in an opening hand, you can use it to draw an additional card if you're desperate, if you mulligan quite low. Sensei's Dividing Top, always good to just have. It's a cheap artifact, and it lets you draw, and it lets you manipulate the top of your library. Sword of the Meek is really good for cycling in and out of the graveyard when you're playing Breya, because she brings in those Thopters. So you play Breya, you sacrifice the Thopters and the Sword of the Meek for whatever reason. You replay Breya, we'll go over that. Brings the sword back as well. That's 4 artifacts entering every time Breya enters, basically, which is cool. The One Ring, card draw, obviously good. And Wishclaw Talisman, the final piece of tutelage that we have in the deck. And this is the section that's had the most changes because it was the smallest section. And so by percentage, it's had the biggest changes because I took out 2 cards. I took out Mechanized Production and I took out Revel in Riches because I realized I don't need them. I thought I did. I thought that pairing them with Descent into Avernus was fine. It is fine. It's not very efficient. It's pretty mana intensive, and wasn't as good as what I'm doing now. Then we've got Mystic Remora, Rhystic Study for super awesome, sick card draw, Smothering Tithe for ramp and additional artifacts, Underworld Breach for graveyard shenanigans. Then for the land base, we've got a couple of questionable cards that I'm not sure about, like Treasure Vault. It's an artifact land, so it is still an artifact in play. And then Academy Ruins lets us get an artifact back if we're desperate, but I'm not entirely sure about it yet. As well as the colored artifact lands that don't enter tapped are all here as well. And then just your normal good stuff. Ancient Tomb, Arid Mesa, Badlands, City of Brass, Command Tower, all of that stuff. Mistrise Village, Ottawara, cEDH good stuff. And Spire of Industry, actually, is a good one to point out because I'm never not going to have artifacts. So it is basically a mana confluence all the time, which is awesome. Let me go over the reason for the changes beyond the fact that what I was doing just wasn't very efficient and was kind of bad. I realized through playtesting the deck that I didn't need Mechanized Production or Revel in Riches. And that is because the way this deck works, what it wants to do, is it wants to get Descent into Avernus into play sort of as early as possible, so that it starts generating the counters, but a lot of the time it doesn't matter. You can sort of get the loop going the same turn that you play Descent into Avernus anyway. So Descent into Avernus says, at the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Descent counters onto Descent into Avernus, and then each player creates X treasure tokens, and it deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of counters on it. Obviously, giving treasure to your opponents isn't ideal. But with this deck, the goal is to stop them from having any more turns. So in theory, it won't matter so much. You're not going to help ramp them into anything other than interaction, which again, still kind of bad, but that's taken into account. And then the next thing you want to do is play Time Sieve. So what you do, you play Descent into Avernus, you play Time Sieve, you sacrifice 5 artifacts to take an extra turn, and then you put 2 counters on Descent into Avernus. That gives you 2 more treasure. You sack another 3 artifacts in addition to the 2 treasure to take an extra turn with Time Sieve. If you're super duper mega desperate, you can sacrifice the Time Sieve to itself. I had to do that in a game recently. It still worked out. Was very good. And then once this gets to 6 counters, which is the 3rd activation, it's self-sufficient. It makes enough treasure to sacrifice 2 Time Sieve to keep the loop going, and this loop will kill everybody. Ideally, you don't want to die to this. We're not looking to draw, we're looking to win. So then, by the point that it's at 6, you're generating an additional treasure that turn, and you can potentially go to the next turn and have an additional 3 treasure already. And you should have lands at this point anyway, because this happens during the game, allowing you to play Breya. She herself is an artifact. She brings in 2 more artifact bodies. That's 3 more artifacts for Time Sieve. But at this point is when you want to also, as soon as you can, start sacrificing artifacts to Breya herself to start gaining that 5 life. By the time you've gained 10 life off of Breya, normally you should be pretty well ahead unless you've taken a lot of damage throughout the game. But you should be ahead enough that you will not die to Descent into Avernus when other people die. And that'll allow you to win the game. You gotta watch out for other people playing the One Ring, obviously, and you've got to watch out for counter magic or removal or whatever, which is where Grand Abolisher, Voice of Victory, and Defense Grid come into play. Obviously, Defense Grid is the worst of those because we're giving our opponents treasure. And so each spell costing 3 more to cast isn't going to be too much of a problem. But it can still help. It's still there. And worst case scenario, it's another cheap artifact you can sacrifice to the Time Sieve. So, like, this isn't a perfect deck. This isn't a tournament deck. I play cEDH for fun, and I'm still playing off-meta deck. And I really like it. The earliest this deck can start this loop that I've figured out with the list as it currently is turn 2. If you can get Descent into Avernus into play on turn 1, which isn't unrealistic, because we've got free mana rocks, we've got soul rings, we've got mana vaults, we've got lands, and we've got Rite of Flame, Jeska's Will, all that sort of stuff. Not that crazy to get Descent into Avernus into play turn 1. And then if turn 2 you play Time Civ, you're already starting the turn with 2 treasures that you got from Descent into Avernus. You just need to play another 3 artifacts, which again, not unrealistic. And then you can take another turn again. And then you start the turn with 4 artifacts from Descent into Avernus. You play 1 more artifact. Again, still not unrealistic. And then by that point, Time Civ, Descent into Avernus becomes self-sufficient. You loop that through. You play Breya. You sacrifice artifacts to Breya to gain life to outvalue your opponents. Turn 2, it's right there. The biggest problem with that is people having interaction, people being ready for it, people countering the Descent into Avernus or the Time Civ or what have you. But it can do it. People will probably stop you, but it's possible. Other changes I made to this deck were I swapped out Molten Duplication for an Imposter mech. I did this because 3 opponents worth of goods to copy is better than relying on 1 myself worth of goods to copy for value. This way I can potentially get an Atali or somebody else's Esper Sentinel, somebody else's Orcish Bowmaster. You get the idea. It's also tutorable for artifact tutors, which is most of my tutors. There's not a tutor in here that can't search for artifacts, I don't think. And it's also good for pulling out of my graveyard with other artifact synergy. So it functions better than an instant or sorcery, in theory. Haven't had much of an opportunity to test that out yet, but that's the theory. I also, like I said, added Mindbreak Trap and Flusterstorm, and I added Brain Freeze, which alludes to one of the other ways this deck can win. So we're running Lion's Eye Diamond, we're running Underworld Breach. With Brain Freeze, you can target yourself, put 3 cards into your graveyard, exile them to play Lion's Eye Diamond, sacrifice the Lion's Eye Diamond to add 3 mana, and exile another 3 cards from your graveyard to cast Brain Freeze. It'll copy itself for each other card cast this turn because it's got Storm. You put a whole bunch of cards into your own graveyard. You put your entire library into your graveyard by just looping this, and then you replay the things that you need from the graveyard to win. Or you just cast it and target your opponents once the Storm count is high enough to be a problem. Alternatively, Wheel of Fortune does something very similar. You cast it for 3, you discard your hand, you sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond to discard the new 7 to generate 3 mana, exile 3 cards from your graveyard with Underworld Breach, recast the Wheel of Fortune, present a loop, draw your entire library. Then you still do the thing. And lastly, Breya's other ability to sacrifice 2 artifacts and deal 3 damage to target player. It's much less efficient, it's much less likely, but it is possible to get to a point where you can sacrifice Breya and then bring her back and loop that with something like Goblin Welder and Time Civ for the untap. And you can just keep doing that, and that generates more artifacts, which you can then pay to sacrifice to Breya to ping for 3 damage, and you can present that as a loop. It's very possible, but it's not very efficient. Because you need stuff to sacrifice still, to Time Civ to take the extra turns, and then also stuff to sacrifice to Breya, and it's harder to generate that without just having Descent into Avernus generating the treasure for you. but it's still possible, still doable. That is a loop you can present. The other addition I made that I mentioned earlier is Valley Flood Caller. I realized that being able to cast Time Sieve on a turn where people have spent their resources and their counter magic to try and stop another player from winning. You flash in Time Sieve on someone else's end step, you activate it on someone else's end step, you take it the next turn. You don't take an additional turn after your turn, you take a turn after this one. And so you wait for everyone to spend all of their interaction, you cast Time Sieve, you sack some artifacts, you take an extra turn, you play Descent into Avernus, or a tutor, or whatever. You do what you have to do to then start your loop that way on someone else's turn, or when someone else would have had a turn after people have spent their interaction. It's chef's kiss. It's very good. It's good fun. We've also got Intuition and Gifts Ungiven, so we've got some piles for that, which are Savine's Reclamation and Underworld Breach are two of the cards that you're going to pretty much always go find with those. And then either a piece that's missing from what you need, or a Brain Freeze, or a Wheel of Fortune, or a Lion's Eye Diamond. Whatever piece you're missing is the third and or fourth piece. And then whatever they give you, you can use to either do the thing or get the thing back. So if the opponent you target gives you Sabine's Reclamation, you can use it to return Lion's Eye Diamond, or Time Sieve, or Descent into Avernus, or Rhystic Study, or Mystic Remora, whatever you go get from your graveyard to play. If they give you Underworld Breach, you can then use that, exile 3 cards from your graveyard to put whatever spell you wanted from your graveyard onto the stack to then play. And if they give you what you actually searched for and wanted, then you don't have to worry about that. Or if they give you one thing you wanted and one of the recursion things, you just recur the thing that you didn't get to keep. And it's really good. It's stupid. I've won multiple games now where I've used Intuition to go get Savine's Reclamation, Underworld Breach, and Descent into Avernus because I've already found Time Sieve using one of my artifact tutors. So yeah, that's the Breya deck V2. No more mechanized production, no more revel in riches. You just want to outvalue your opponents by gaining life through Breya's ability before Descent into Avernus kills you. If somebody stops that, they're basically agreeing to a draw, which I don't know how people feel about that. If, like, I'm not trying to draw, I'm trying to win. If you stop me, you'll potentially force a draw. Is that frowned upon? I don't think so. I think it's reasonable. I'm not trying to draw. I know trying to draw is very frowned upon, especially in tournament cEDH. But I'm not trying to draw. I am actively trying to win, and a draw is just what happens if I get stopped in a way that doesn't remove Descent into Avernus. So let me know what you think of this down in the comments. Again, this isn't supposed to be tournament level best it could possibly be. I'm obviously not running Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation, which, if I wanted the deck to be even more efficient, I would be doing that. There's no reason not to, other than that I don't want to, because I find that win condition just to be kind of boring. This deck can still win on turn 2, turn 3, so on and so forth. So I'm not too stressed about having Thassa's Oracle and Demonic Consultation. If you like these videos, tell me in the comments so I know to keep making them or to stop making them or whatever. Chances are if you tell me to stop making them, I'm probably not going to listen to you though, because like negative feedback isn't helpful. If you've got constructive feedback on how I can improve these videos, do that in the comments as well. Like the video, subscribe, all that crap, whatever. And yeah, this is Breya as it stands right now, and it works. It works very consistently. If you want to play Magic with me, check out my link to my Discord in the description down below. Join the Discord. There's an MTG Corner channel. I'd be keen to play Magic with some fine folks on Untap, or I can try and figure out how to get Spell Table working, because I've never used Spell Table, but that's very possible to do. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.